Thanks, Raymond. Well, we've been talking about the architecture and the context of the site. And I'm really going to be talking now about the animation, the vitality of the site, the art, the software. It's very early days yet. We haven't signed along any dotted lines with any organizations or any artists. But what I want to try and communicate to you is the approach, the kinds of things that it's possible to do, and why we need these kinds of facilities in the CPS. So, from revolution to revelation, that's not a bad slogan for CPS, really. It's actually an artwork, it's a painting by a young Hong Kong artist. Some of you will recognize it, Lee Kit. And he just had a show opening last night in Kun's Home, so go and see it, it's a great show. But CPS, what will it be? What will it become? Well, a new vital cultural center of local, regional, and international significance. And it'll concentrate primarily on the visual and performative arts. Now, it's already been used, of course, and as an informal space by local arts groups. But this development will greatly expand the possibilities. You'll see how hungry people are for contemporary culture. Those of you who were at Fotan Open Studios last weekend, I mean, there were crowds and crowds and crowds of people. And really what we have to do here now is create a professional benchmark of quality. This is very, very important, by which other things can fit in and people can begin to get a full picture of what's going on in Hong Kong, in our own region, and also further afield. So the new CPS will provide a much-needed, high-quality cultural infrastructure and program. And it'll also make it possible for local arts organizations to consolidate and develop their work. This might mean that some will actually come onto the site and be located there. But in other cases, we are working in partnership with groups. For instance, I mean Parasite, which is just down the road. So what will CPS do for Hong Kong? Well, it will liberate the negative ambience of a former colonial prison. I mean, I'm not too sentimental about prisons in general. And I think, one has to really get the place moving and throbbing, the dynamic, creative expression of contemporary Hong Kong. It'll expose the audiences here to art of the highest quality from around the world. And it'll mediate the colonial and architectural heritage of Hong Kong with high-quality contemporary architecture, which is what you've been seeing just now in these previous presentations. And it'll provide a home for some of the best Hong Kong arts organizations. What CPS will do for Hong Kong number 2? Well, it'll provide an international platform for Hong Kong and Chinese creative talent. I think that's very important, that this kind of critical discourse, which needs to take place increasingly here, you can have it as a local discussion. But actually, if other things that you're showing in these spaces are from outside, there's a benchmarking of quality between the two, and the context changes immediately. And that's very, very important. And it will improve radically experience of the contemporary arts and education in arts for young people and adults. And lastly, it'll be a multimedia place of enjoyment, leisure, and delight, open to everyone until later in the evening. I want to see these galleries, I want to see these reading rooms, these spaces, these screenings. I want to see them going on at least until 10 in the evening. And then, of course, the bars, the restaurants, the things can go on till whenever, till people want to go home. This is a dance space based here, which I think is doing a lot of contextual dance in some of the walled villages in the new territories. And it could be a group, I mean, I haven't talked to them yet, but I mean, could be very much involved with the interpretation of the spaces in the CPS. What CPS will do for the region? Well, it'll examine the contemporary culture of the region and the world, but from a specifically Hong Kong perspective. Now, there isn't one Hong Kong, there are many, but that in a way is something we've got to develop and actually bring forward as a critical element of the CPS program. It'll provide a unique cultural umbrella of museum quality facilities and non-museum spaces. And that's important too. We've got these great galleries which can take high-value works of art. I'll say a little bit about that in a moment. But also, we've got these rougher spaces outside, the parade ground, the prison yard, some of the prison buildings. And art can look fantastic in those as well. Some art. We research and display modern and contemporary culture from all parts of Asia and provide vital and accessible focus to the contemporary visual culture of the Pearl River Delta and further afield. And lastly, we'll provide professional training in art history, curatorship, and arts management. I think this is very important. There's no shortage of talent here, but there's a shortage of experience in this field. And there's a real possibility for developing people on. And this is all part of actually creating and developing the discourse about contemporary art and quality. As Bharti there, a young Indian artist, and the work by her. So let's talk about CPS on the international stage. And I think it has to be seen as a leading player in the international arts community. It should also, again relating to the presentations you've had earlier, become a model for the reuse of heritage architecture with contemporary purpose. And it'll become an international attraction, and this again is important for Hong Kong, commensurate with those of other world cities. I mean, of course, with the development of West Kowloon as well, these things should be seen together. But at the moment, when you're talking about contemporary visual arts and culture, in terms of infrastructure, Hong Kong is one big black hole. And it shouldn't be. There's so much else. It's so dynamic in every other respect. And this really, I think, would make a very, very big impact on the international stage. It'll generate and receive exhibitions that are seen all over the world. It'll host and initiate international artist in residence projects, congresses and symposia, and commission important works on site. Just talking about works of art and why we need a new build. This work by Paul McCarthy, quite a recent work, it's a portrait of George Bush, as you can see, is worth about $4.5 million. It's made of pink latex. Now, you can't put this as an old prison building. You really need careful museum spaces. And this goes back in a line on which it includes Andy Warhol and Picasso and Pollock, as you'll see later. But one does need special spaces if one is able to show the very best in contemporary art. Key areas of my work: to provide concrete recommendations to the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charitable Trust on the following: identity, ethos, vision of the new CPS, integration of different elements of the project, its artistic program, finance, staffing, governance, and I'm also working as a visiting professor in curatorship at the Chinese University here. Program. Well, some preliminary ideas, how we kick off. And we'd like to do things before the whole building is done, just to get the whole thing moving. Willie Dorner, and this is the kind of thing that also Space Y, who I referred to earlier, could be doing. I'd like to see a choreographer in residence part of the time on the site, so one can use the buildings in many, many different ways. Music maestro, please. The reconstruction of Arseny Avramov's Concert of Sirens in Baku. You can see it's tune factory sirens, noises from the city, 25 steam locomotives, the flotilla of the Red Caspian Navy, choirs of brigades of soldiers, and 2 artillery batteries. Now, why do this? Why redo this? Well, first of all, to denote the place is open, to waken up those ghosts, to get things moving. This is an amazing example of futurist sound, but it also relates to music today. The way how disco is a sampling sound, bringing them together. And this is what Abramov was doing in the 20s. And I think what we'd be able to do is to also work with local music and sound groups like the Soundbox Festival to look at ways there could be a local development. Thank you. And looking at dance and other kinds of